the total amount of reps that up until this time as we approach game week has never really changed in the years that we've been here. Whether we've had a returning starting quarterback or not. And those of you that have watched us practice and how we go about some two huddle situations and rotating guys, we've always handled it that way, and we will continue to do so until we get to game week.
Do you anticipate making a decision next week for the game? Or
oh, yes.
Go
yeah.
into the game not knowing?
I think we'll make a decision by then, confidently saying, yeah. And it's, yeah, I guess that's just the best way to we're not going to wait till kickoff or anything like that, no.
Coach, are you considering it all like a platoon kind of?
No, not at this time, no. I will say, though, that if called upon, I am extremely confident that all three of these quarterbacks understand our offense and can execute it and give us a chance to win football games.
If I had told you a few months ago that at this point in the preseason you were still waiting for a starting quarterback, would you have had any concern had I told you this a while back?
No, because I think this is right according to plan from the spring on, is that the open competition. I guess it's easier to comment now, is that one of the factors that has played into this is that Matt Myers missed a huge part of spring practice last year with a hamstring injury, and he was not really cleared to go into scrimmage situations where a pass rush situation would exert him or something. It wasn't cleared, so to give him that evaluation time didn't happen. And so, now we're just clearing what really would have been his spring practice. So now we're kind of still continuing in the evaluation. That's just right. But no, I think we have not deviated from any thoughts that we've had. Yes.
Are there any new recruits or transfer players that you're particularly excited about?
Oh wow, we got so many new guys. I don't know if I could eat up this whole thing. Oh boy, you're gonna put the. I really like our receiving core. Everybody brings something new to the table. Some have been in and out based on health. Daniel Lee is one of our young junior college wide receivers. Carlton Todd, another one from Iowa Central. Daniel's from Cisco College in Texas. Bernard Porter is a junior college transfer but has 3 years of eligibility. So those are the older new receivers that we have in the program. Trevor Wilson was an early enrollee and got the spring practices underneath him. And Javian Cuff's a freshman from Vero, Florida, Vero Beach area. And Marlon Johnson was a late addition to our class this summer. Marlon's about 6'4" and gives us some length at the receiver spot. All those guys are in good position to play. Now, with the new redshirt rules that the NCAA incorporated last year, where you can play in 4 games and still save it, there may be guys that'll still fall underneath that. But at this moment, don't be surprised if all those guys I just mentioned end up on the field Thursday night.
With all the players you lost, but all the players you still returned, how do you maybe balance and measure success and expectations this year, knowing what you guys were able to accomplish? Yeah,
well, each and every team, Nick, is going to have its own identity, and I think when you graduate players and some of the fine players that and the men that gave us the contributions, we spend a lot of time on those. But this team will create its own identity. I think it really has more so since they returned this summer and went into camp. I think it's a group that understands in order to be successful, they're going to have to play well together. I think when you look at our experience, most of that's in the offensive line and a little bit of course, at the running back position in the backfield. Those are things you have to do. The defensive line and other positions, even in the secondary, whether or not they were listed as the starter, we had quite a few guys that kind of rotated in there. But not just playing themselves, now they also have to step into leadership, roles and things like that. And it's going to be a challenging September for us to have that all come together in a way that we want as we prepare for the conference season. But it's exciting.
after the 6-6 year, you guys were left out of a bowl game. I know there was a lot of motivation that this team had to get to where you were a year ago. With all the success you did have, how much more juice and energy do you sense in guys from all that success?
I think there's a mixture of energy and motivation from this group based on the season not ending the way we wanted it to end last year. I think there's also an expectation of the program has taken steps and they have to, keep working to get better to match or surpass that. And I also think they're motivated by the fact that they feel like there's been a lot of conversation more so on who's not here than who is here. And I think they're, and if, from the day we arrived, we've talked about wanting to build a consistent winning football program. And in order to do that, you have to consistently recruit well and more so evaluate and develop players. And if we're doing our jobs correctly and we're doing a good job, whether it be in the weight room or our players doing what they need to do individually, hopefully we put ourselves in a position that we can continue to do that. Now, yes, did we get some unexpected things that maybe make us a little less experienced and a little more youthful in some spots? Yes, but to me that's exciting because sometimes they don't know what they don't know and they just go out and play hard for you.
Your offensive and defensive lines are coming back with a lot of experience. I mean, how much of a leadership role do you see them taking individually and as a position group?
I think they've done a great job right now as far as leadership within their rooms and within their units. Again, a lot of times we, all of us in the room spend time talking about the people that are scoring touchdowns and getting statistics. But many times, if you're going to win championships or compete for them, you've got to be able to be successful and up front on both sides of the ball. And I'm very, very happy and pleased where we're at right now. Of course, you got to stay healthy. You got to keep developing. We have some guys in the two deep, especially on defense, that haven't played a lot of football, but I know have worked hard to put themselves in a position to help us.
With the offensive line in particular, knowing you're going to have a new starting quarterback, with 4 or 5 guys returning on the offensive line, how much, I guess, is that a relief that you're not trying to break a new guy in with a brand new
Right.
line?
That probably helps to answer those questions. You're right, because with experienced running backs and offensive linemen, you hope that'll help the starting quarterback and all quarterbacks whenever they play have a chance to settle in a little bit. And, we did an outstanding job last year protecting the passer, and our quarterbacks did a great job getting rid of the football. So hopefully that'll maintain because, defensive coordinators and people what are they going to do? You're going to look at a guy with either 1 career start or 0 career starts, and they're going to find ways to put pressure on them and do things. So having an experienced group that has seen different things along the way is a huge plus for us. I think Scott Fuchs, our new offensive line coach. Scott's been a part of some very successful offenses, some very physical offensive lines, and I think has done a great job of adding a new dimension to the physicality of our offensive line.
Having the returners and the experience that you have in the offensive line and the running backs, and not as much in the passing game, how much will that dictate your identity? Will you need to rely on the running game early in the season more?
Again, I think from the start, we've always strived to be balanced, okay? You've got to be able to run the football to set up your passing game, and you got to be able to throw the ball when needed. Is there some things I think you may go, there might be some things where you look back to probably more like the 17 season and things like that, but again, when we took strides offensively as a program is when we became aggressive and took more vertical throws downfield, and we're going to have to find ways to do that within all our personnel and utilize the talent that we have. But like anyone, you're going to play to your strengths, and that's what we will do.
Going back.
Yep.
Can you use the fact that whoever the starting quarterback is week 1, can you use the fact that the way his film out? Can you use
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some film on Kyle Van Treese. Dominic Johnson had some time last year in kind of mop-up role, so to speak. Matt Myers played a series maybe against Bowling Green of anything. So, yeah, there's not a lot out there But I still think we've been, multiple enough in what we do. I think people still break down your tendencies, but yeah, I think that'll be something that can play to your favor at least early. Exactly what this quarterback will do once we name one.
You've got a big hole in the offensive line. You've got to replace James O'Hagan at center. How vital will the development of the center be in the development of the offense?
James O'Hagan, not just being an outstanding player, his leadership, his durability, his approach to the game. But when many of you were at the Ritchie Family Fieldhouse dedication, and you talk about in video play, talk about legacies and things like that. Well, James's legacy is how he approached it and went about it, from studying film to having enthusiasm each and every day in practice, and he was there every day in practice. Took probably 99% of the snaps when he was a starter from his redshirt freshman year on. That has been passed on in an attitude and a mentality within the room. Mike Nowitzki's a redshirt freshman, and he watched and learned under the best last year. Jacob Gall's another young man that's played some center, very versatile. I thought had a really excellent year, being forced in the Central Michigan game to be able to fill in at any of the three spots interior-wise. And we have a graduate transfer from Wagner and Dan Clifford, who's played a fair amount of football there. So we're very confident. Mike Kenefick's a redshirt freshman, hasn't played much, but he's been here for 4 seasons. Jack Klink's another young man who's entering his 4th year. He's been here 3 years working. We have a lot of options at the center position, and like I say, and I think I said it one other time after a practice. I feel this is the most depth and interchangeable parts that we've had in the offensive line.
How important, though, is that center going to be in the development of the quarterbacks?
It is. There's a lot of things that are going to go together there, though. When you have guards that have played a lot of football, it's all going to be in tune together. Yes, is there going to be some things, rookie mistakes or things like that? I'm sure there are. But we're focused on getting them ready and giving them as many scenarios that they could see. And I'm excited about Mike Nowitzki. It took Mike Nowitzki about 4 practices in this program last year to show us that taking a high school tight end and making him a center was one of the best moves in maybe a recruiting evaluation gambles, I guess, if you're going to call it that, about a projection that we have made in our time here.
Nowitzki going to start the view?
Right now, Mike is working with the first group, but again, as we see, we're continuing. But right now, Mike is working with the first unit. Scott?
Your running backs and stuff, how excited are you with those guys?
Yeah, again, some things were talked about last year through attrition and things like that. Well, sometimes attrition comes because other people are looking for playing time, and we had some young men who received their degrees and played some good football here. But the talent and the competition at that position really lent itself to create the depth that we had. Jared Patterson and Kevin Marks leading that way and really forming a nice 1-2 punch. Not just based on production, but because they have different styles, and we're very fortunate to have that. We've been very pleased with Dylan McDuffie, and from right here in Buffalo, and the way Dylan has progressed, and trying to find ways to use him. And he's another bigger back, and need him involved in a lot of special teams. Theo Anderson is a young man who played probably more a little bit 2 years ago. Theo has kind of lost some weight, really kind of changed himself in his approach, and again has had a great attitude when a room is highly competitive, and we got to find ways to use him. And then we have a young true freshman, kind of going back to some of those original questions. I got to try to get to some other positions. Ron Cook is a true freshman who's a very versatile player out of St. John's College in the D.C. area. And Ron's going to be involved in our return game, very early in this season. So as you're kind of alluding to, there's a lot of weapons there, a group that we're highly confident in and excited about.
Chance, has the redshirt rule and maybe even the transfer portal changed the way you think a little bit about playing younger players?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to. You have to look at it holistically. And there's a lot of different things that change. Is that, are you going to only have a guy for 4 years? It's it's what it is today. And because of that, I think it's documented, but I think we've had, got to go through my mental count here of we've had, I think, 7 players that left the program that left with degrees. 1 went to the NFL and 6 grad transferred. Okay, so those young men did what they came here to do, to play, get their degrees. They did what we asked. Okay, would we have loved them? But now, talking 7 players, it should be seniors. All of a sudden, how did we have to replace them? And you get a lot younger and inexperienced. So part of it is, if young men are available, can we, do we have to get those guys ready? And sometimes it's through injury. How are we going to use them in special teams? Can we get them to a point where they're going to play snaps? But at the same time, you still have to look at it in the long haul like we used to, okay? And where is that young man going to be in 5 years? And that's where it's at. I tell you, there's probably hasn't been a week gone by somewhere in the last 4 years where I didn't look at, I wish I would have redshirted Chuck Harris in one of his first 2 seasons, just based on the amount of snaps he played. And fortunately for him, he's in an NFL camp. But where else could he? We don't know. But at the same time, we have to look at that. There's a lot I could spend on the transfer portal and what it may do to Group of 5 schools. And there's a lot of thoughts that have to go into play here.
Jared Patterson obviously had a great freshman season last year. I'm wondering, were you able to anticipate that you would be one of your stronger offensive players at this point in the offseason last year?
At this point last year, Jarrett was what we call a gray shirt. Okay, he graduated and didn't enroll his first semester. James and Jarrett were in a group of about 4 young men that came in that next January. So going through spring practice, both Jarrett and James showed the ability that they were going to help our football team. Okay, to what degree, we didn't know. Okay, and then in fall camp last year, he tweaked a hamstring, so really had to slow him down. To think at this point, standing in front of this group last year, probably not. But did we know that he had great balance, quickness, ability to make someone miss in space? Yes, we did. But never would we think that he would have put up the numbers that he did.
With James, how much did you look at maybe moving him to the middle, and kind of what went into the decision to not make it?
Well, Matt Outwanowski's the main reason, because Matt is an extremely intelligent player who works at it very hard. James will play in the middle, okay? James will and has. He has practiced at it in the spring. He's done it before. And if you really watch our linebackers, depending on formations, sometimes the middle backer has to go out and play in space anyway. So there's a lot of things that are interchangeable. And then the will linebacker, where what James plays, is actually lining up in the middle of the defense, the offense anyway, and he's playing like a middle linebacker. So, that gives us great versatility. Matt can also play that will spot if we need to, based on teams. Tim Terry's also a highly flexible type, versatile, I should say, linebacker who can play both outside spots. So if Tim Terry goes in for Gaddafi right, he's going to play the rover spot. He can go in and for either James or Matt and play the will linebacker, and then the other one will move into the middle. So we have a lot of versatility within those 4 young men, and as well as others. So James will play some there. And then, of course, you get in the down and distance packages, we'll have different groups there.
Have you gotten a chance to, how much have you scouted Robert Morris so far?
Well, in most situations, you get all their film from last year.
How long has it been?
Oh, since the spring. Yeah, we've had typical for most programs. Our staff, I ask the staff before we get to fully into, or as we're going through our summer camp travels for recruiting purposes and evaluations, and before they break for vacation, is that we have the first 4 non-conference teams will have a preliminary game plan. That'll start to pick back up and kind of revisit now that we know more about our team here probably in the next 48 to 72 hours.
Lance, has this style or personality that may be either different or similar to last year's?
I think it's similar to some. It still doesn't have quite the experienced confidence of a Khalil Hodge. And, I think that's the one thing that everybody's going to wait, because Khalil made a lot of things right for a lot of us, okay? And somebody's not in the right gap, he could fix it and get there and could see that. Matt had a chance to play a lot in the Kent State game. Khalil was out with the targeting call, and then we were ahead, and we just kept playing him. So some of that, there's for a guy who's going to be a true senior, eligibility-wise, yeah, there's going to be some things there. But I think this group has an excitement and a little bit about it that it's waiting to show, and I think that'll start to reveal itself a little bit more next Thursday.
With all the players that you guys lost in the offseason this past year, I'm wondering, does that hurt people talk and sort of anticipate the season to be sort of an incubation period or like a rebuilding process? I'm wondering how you respond to that.
I could see why people would think that, and probably there's some justification for that. Like I've said, I think maybe as expectations continue to grow and people when you look statistically at what has left the program, that's a fair statement at this point. But as I've said before, maintaining success is by keeping young men motivated and challenged to get better each and every day. And that's our responsibility. And I think this group is really receptive to that. And, I'm excited. I really have enjoyed our fall camp. I think the way we've modified our schedule some and what we're doing, this group is coachable and accepting of it, and they take it when you're pointing out things that they're not doing correctly. And like I said, it's going to be a challenging. It's going to be a challenging month, the non-conference, and then as we head into the season. But that's what makes the Mid-American Conference what it is because of the competitiveness within and the balance within the league. It's going to be a challenge, and we're embracing that.
The athletic defense you've had since you've been here, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that, how it could manifest.
I just think our overall speed in some spots, the safety position is probably the most physical with Tyrone Hill. I've really been impressed with Tyrone, his maturation, of his work ethic, of what it's taking. I think, I've talked about Antonio Nunn before, and I've talked about him, Zach LaFave. I'm throwing in some offensive guys. I apologize. But watching guys who, when guys are the man in high school and things like that, and then all of a sudden you've been a backup for a year or two, that, sometimes it's frustrating. And sometimes it's tough to motivate every day to go out there. But as those guys went through December and those extra practices, things started to change. Maybe they started seeing light at the end of the tunnel for them, and it started to pay off, and it carried over into spring football. I like where those, Joey Banks is another guy who's had an excellent summer, has kind of changed his body a little bit to work on some things. His, second year in the program now. He's got a great attitude and where it's going. Apri Washington is I think Apri's one of those guys that we talk about guys who aren't there, but nobody's talking about really what kind of year he played last year and how competitive he was in the plays that he made. Dev Russell was leading the MAC in pass breakups through 4 games, 1/3 of the season until he was hurt for the rest of the year. So there's experience there that I think Juan Keith Akins and Isaiah King are 2 backup corners that run as good as any corners we've had since we've been here. So those are the things. And then I think when I mentioned the Tim Terrys and the Gaddafi Wrights give us length and athleticism. And sometimes you say athleticism, you're just thinking speed in that. But when you look at Gaddafi Wright and Tim Terry, there are some guys that take up some passing lanes and can do some things. And we didn't look like that before. Now they got to go out and play. Malcolm Kuntz. Taylor Riggins was about as steady as anybody we've had last year. Nobody really talked about him. Eddie Wilson's had a great camp. Eddie's lost about 15 pounds, still a big man. He's going to be hard to move, but he's moving as well as Eddie has. Desandrick Foxworth, again, finally getting him healthier, what he has shown. Ron McGee is one of the newcomers that'll be in the rotation. Chibuzi Onwuka was a guy that got hurt in the Temple game with a high ankle. Never came back around. Highly frustrating. He's had a great last 10 days of camp. So when I look at some of those guys up front, we are as twitchy as we've ever been and been able to move as well as being strong. So, we got to go out and produce, but I like that group.
Anything else for Coach?
It's been fun. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll head out to